Welcome back, everyone. I'm Holly Clements. I'm SSKB's Victorian General Manager. After the success of our first online event last week, we're back again with Greg Layden of Chief Maker for some tips and tricks to get us through lockdown. Greg is an executive coach based in Melbourne, so he's in lockdown with us. He's going through it as well. He's coached senior executives for more than 100 companies across 5 continents. He's the trusted coach of some of the most in-demand C-suite executives and elite sport coaches in Australia. He's here to offer what he's personally tried and tested on his own family while living under stage 4 restrictions in Victoria. Today's session is going to be focused around mindfulness, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. Let's get started, Greg.
G'day, Holly. Good to be back, everyone, and certainly looking forward to today. This is a huge topic, and I think one that when I first started looking into mindfulness, which would be about 15 years ago, the depth and breadth of this topic is actually enormous. There's been countless books written about it, but let's just quickly, before we dive into mindfulness, we're going to talk about what it is, create a little bit of a utility tool belt for those of us in isolation to use it for not only mental strength, but also performance, right? Really nailing your job or parenting better or whatever it is you want to do. First of all, I just want to go back and talk a bit about what we did last week. For those that are listening and new to this, last week we teamed up with SSKB because they've got a lot of customers in Victoria at the moment, and a lot of them are in isolation in tall buildings downtown that don't have much space. They might have kids at home doing homeschooling. They might also be trying to work. And like you, I'm in that environment. I'm a father of 3. I've got 3 kids here at home. It's busy. My wife and I both work, so we're tag team. She's downstairs with the kids now. If one comes flying through the door, please forgive us. We'll maintain some mindfulness and just keep progressing. So what we did last week, and this is important because last week we spoke about building your resilience toolkit. And that was about understanding what are some of your triggers for a negative emotional response. It might have been overwhelm, it might have been depression, anxiety, it might have been frustration or anger, and learning what those triggers are. And before they get a hold of you, putting in place some sort of mantra or call to action to get yourself into a better space. That was about resilience. Resilience is in many ways responding to a setback. When you've gone backwards, how do you get back on track? Mindfulness is another thing to add to our toolkit, right? It stems from a lot of Buddhist traditions. That's the original source, which is why I'm in awe of the giants of thinking and spiritualism that have gone before us on this topic. I hope they'll forgive me if I get any of this wrong. Right, this started centuries and centuries ago with the Buddhist traditions, and what we want to talk about is what is mindfulness and how do we apply it in the context of ISO in a really busy world. We're not sitting in a cave in a mountaintop here. That's not the kind of ISO we're in. Most of us are in a place we have to keep working. A lot of us have kids running around. We've got jobs to do. We can't just focus on something that's just simple, right? So what I've discovered over the last 15 years is a combination of things is the way to achieve mindfulness. You need a bunch of tools, and I want to teach you 3 of those in particular today to give you something that you can do just in 5 minutes on a day, even less, even 30-second reset of your state through a little breathing practice can help. And so I'm going to talk a bit about exactly what is mindfulness. We're going to talk about why it's important, and then we're going to dive into 3 key things that you can do. And then we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do next week in routines and rituals. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is being present in the moment. It is having your attention right now, not in the future, not in the past, right now. But not only that, it's about having no judgment, no objection or no subjective judgment about what's going on. It's just being aware right now where you are of what's happening and not really casting any sort of ideas or judgments about what's happening or carrying any or being worried about your emotions. It's about knowing what your emotions are, but not necessarily trying to control them, just observing those emotions. Mindfulness is developed generally and historically through meditation. That is the number one tool, is the base of all Buddhist spiritual development. right? The benefits are endless. There's been many, many studies, and just a few on the top of my head, I think it's studies done by Gallup around mindfulness and well-being at work, 5 times more productive, 36% more likely to recover from illness. The more you cultivate mindfulness, the more you decrease the stress in your life, which means some of the negative hormones that get released in the body, like epinephrine and cortisol, actually reduce. Now, these particular biochemicals actually result in things like increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, increased blood sugar levels in the body. And these things over time result in all sorts of early onset diseases that we just don't want. Not only that, you just feel terrible, the amount of stress in your life. And what does stress come from? Stress comes from thinking about things that might happen, that could happen, about the past, about the future. And so returning to the now, right? And so Eckhart Tolle wrote a magnificent book called The Power of Now. And he spoke in that book about how there is no future, there is no past, there is really only the now. That's the only place that we live life. But in this world where we are, drawn into, 1,000 emails talking about plans for the future and things that have happened, and we replay all sorts of, challenges at work or relationship issues, or we've got things to do, 1,000 things to do, we just don't have time for. What happens is we are brought away from the now and into trying to manage this huge list of things we're trying to do, stressing about it. And the more we go into that world, the less productive we become. I think in some ways you can almost think of it like RAM in a computer. The more programs we run, the more challenges we face, the less effective we are, and eventually we crash, we become highly ineffective. So this is about really getting yourself back into the present moment. Now, I want to share a bit of a story about my time in the Shaolin Academy. The very first time, I did only go there once, and I went there for about 3 months. And I remember the first few days I was introduced to my master. There's a guy called Sifu Bao, or Master Bao. A diminutive figure, really small guy, quite young. But the presence this young man had was just phenomenal. Like you could feel it as you got close to him. Every single day we meditated for an hour. We did Qigong for an hour. We studied morality and Buddhism. We spent a lot of time really focusing on cultivating this sense of mindfulness and presence. Over about that 3-month period, I remember getting towards the end of it thinking, wow, I've never felt so good in my life. This is just amazing. And he had this incredible manner of walking around, and while all the athletes were either learning new moves or practicing fist forms or even doing physical conditioning, he had this beautiful, calm presence. And what it's reminded me of is when I sort of go into either a boardroom or even into some of the top sporting fields or sporting change rooms, there's always a certain quality of individual that just has a real presence, a real calmness in the moment. They're on top of their game, but also they're just incredibly present. And he had that in spades, and it was inspiring just to be around, and it sort of rubbed off those around him. And I thought, isn't that amazing? How can we try and translate that kind of incredible presence to our world here now, right? Which is so different to the world over there of just training, dawn to dusk every single day. And there's 3 methods that I want to talk you through today, because if you can get some sort of practice in your day, every single day, or every second day, if every day doesn't work for you, the research has said that over about an 8-week period of practicing mindfulness, your brains will rewire. And the research has said that those brains will be rewired permanently for positive thinking, more positive thinking. And wouldn't that be wonderful if we could all be, have more positive thinking, be more present, be more calm, be more considered in our thinking every day? This is in many ways a source of clarity and performance when you go to do a certain activity in the day. So let's talk about these 3 methods that I want to talk to you about today. I've got a little, once again, we had a template last week you could download. Please feel free to download this template yet again. I want to talk you through this. So you've got your own little toolkit or utility belt. Let me find the right document here. So what I want you to think about is Batman. We all know Batman. And what happens is Batman gets in the Joker gets him in a corner and he's stuck. And he thinks, well, what should I do now? And he goes down to his utility belt, that yellow belt that he's got. And he goes, well, I'm going to throw a smoke bomb to get out of this particular problem in 1 minute. The next minute, he's got some sort of incredible wire that he throws across a gap in a building and he zips away out of nowhere. That's what we want here. We want to have your own utility belt, because when stress comes on, if you've only got one response or one little trick in your kit, guess what happens? It doesn't always work. These things don't always work. And so what we need to have is the ability to have some flexibility when the stress comes on. And so that's what we need, more than one sort of like get out of jail free card, or ability to get back to being mindful and present and not judgmental in the moment. I'm going to start with meditation, simply because it is the core practice for all mindfulness. And meditation, if you look at this is a particular handout you can download, and we've just got a very simple definition of mindfulness. It's the quality of being present and fully engage with whatever we're doing in the present moment without judgment, free of distraction and aware of our thoughts and feelings without getting caught up in them. Here are the three methods that I want to talk today about. The core method, the background one, is meditation. And that meditation of just being in the present moment, blocking out everything around you. Now, when I first started getting into Kung Fu and the practice and going over to the academy, I had done very little meditation. So what would happen to me is, as I'd sit down and my little monkey brain would start going off and talking about this, and all these random ideas of memories of things that are going on in my life would pop into my head. And I'd sit there after 20 minutes and going, I don't think I got any value out of this. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who are listening here would say, wow, that sounds a bit like me. Like there's so many things going on right now that I find it hard to meditate. I learned a few things in the academy that taught me a lot about actually how to get into the present moment. I want to talk you just through three things here, which are really cool. The first is a breathing cadence. There's been a lot of research done around the link between your breathing cadence, that is how many seconds you breathe in, how many seconds you hold, how many seconds you breathe out, and how many seconds you hold. That particular cycle, so to speak, and how fast you go through that cycle is directly linked to the quality of our emotional state. So when we change our breathing pattern, we change our state. But also when we start to focus just on our breath, our life force, so to speak, we fall straight into this place of being fully present in the moment. Now, what I learned in the academy was this the different cadences and the effects that had on my mindset or my ability to focus in the moment. And one that really worked for me over a period of time was I learned that a completely even rhythm of 4 seconds of an even breath in, 1 second hold, 4 seconds of an even breath out, and 1 second hold. That little rhythm for me personally made a big difference. And so I'll just demonstrate it for you so you can see what I mean. And this can be something you can apply. The reason I think this is so powerful is I do this about 5 times and my whole body just resets. And what does that take? 4 rounds of 12 seconds, 5 rounds of 12 seconds. No, not even 1 minute. And I'm back into a new place. So I'll just demonstrate it. And by the other benefit of breathing is no one even knows you change your breathing pattern. So you can do this in a meeting. You can do this on a Zoom call. No one will ever know what's going on. Meanwhile, you're resetting yourself in this little 30 to 60 second sort of pattern. So I sort of go like this. I go. Now, I've already got a state change, right? I'm already starting to shift. Maybe if I keep going for another 5 or 6 cycles, my breathing pattern becomes calmer, more relaxed, more in the moment. I've been talking for 15 minutes, so it's probably not as even as it would be. As time goes on, I immediately start to shift into a better place because I'm focusing on that breathing cycle. My attention is automatically in the present, on that breath, even on the sensation of the breath coming in and out of the mouth or in and out of the nose. These things are really, really powerful. So in your own, what we've got here in this toolkit is some practices there under each method, what works for you and some good times for you to do it. I'm going to talk through that in a minute. What we want to do is, as you go through this and as you practice a few things, put down some cadences that work for you as an individual. Well, maybe a 4-1, 4-1 works for you. Maybe try something else. Number 2 is about this idea of letting go of your thoughts. And we go back to the non-judgmental perspective as a thought comes along. And I've often tried to think of the right analogy for this. And I think it's a bit like as you're driving along down a road, instead of looking at every sign, everything going, oh my gosh, look at that thing, look at that thing, look at that thing. It's actually just driving, just focusing on the road right in front of you, not responding to whatever else is going on around you, just focusing on driving. And that's what this is. When you're letting go of these thoughts that pop into your head, it's not about having or being even aware. So you're aware of the emotional response to it, but not responding to that. It's this very objective position. So the secondary thing is what I found is when I first started doing this, I had a lot of thoughts pop into my head. But over time, just continual practice, they just start to disappear. And eventually, I got into a wonderful place of just complete and utter silence. As you're doing that, here's 2 extra little tricks that might help. One is an opening of your vision, like almost a softening of your gaze into an open peripheral vision. And what that does is it silences any of that internal dialogue. If you've ever opened your peripheral vision, this is one of the key aspects of getting in flow, is that open peripheral vision silences the internal dialogue and a lot of the little thoughts that are going through your head. I remember my master talking to me a lot about that, is maintaining a soft gaze. And when we would go meditate and we'd sit in these little, imagine those rock pools, you've probably even seen the Buddhists doing that or the monks doing that. It's exactly what it was like. We would sit around these rock pools and we would meditate for an hour. And his gaze was always this soft gaze, sort of not in between the distant or too close. And it made a big difference, that additional external vision. And the third is the other thing that helps is the positioning of the tongue. A light tongue against the palate of the mouth. So if you're finding your brain just keeps ticking over, just try the peripheral vision and the popping of the tongue up under the palate of your mouth. Those 2 things might help you just calm down in the moment. The third
I guess,
meditation.
Greg, just
Yes.
a question on that. Do you think that just comes with time? Because I guess one of the things that I really struggle with is turning off those thoughts. I can breathe and I can control my breathing, and that's generally fine. But one of the things that I really find hard is just turning off those thoughts. So do you think that just comes with practice, or?
Yep. So in my mind, this is not about just sitting down one day and saying I'm going to meditate for an hour. This is about reps. So I would prefer to see someone do 3 to 5 minutes in the morning and 3 to 5 minutes in the evening every day, as opposed to try and nail half an hour at lunchtime on their first attempt. Right? Okay. It's a bit like getting fit. When you are, my sense is if you are practicing and you can do the breathing and just focus on the breathing and that takes all of your attention, then that should block out everything. If you add in the open peripheral vision, my sense is that should also block out a bit more. Then, like as I said, like you're driving down the highway, as those thoughts come, just let them go. Back to your breathing, open that vision again, breathing, vision, and you really should start to get some benefit pretty quickly. Just like, you walk 1 kilometer one day, 1,500 meters the next, 2Ks the day after that, 2 kilometers the day after that, the expertise or the muscle of this will grow. I think the thing to remember here is you're building a mental strength. So strength doesn't come overnight. You've got to build that as a fitness. And mindfulness is the same. It comes and goes. If you don't practice mindfulness, it will disappear. right? So this is something that has to be seen as. That's why I think it's so important to understand the benefits. Because if we know what this is doing from us, from a clarity, from a performance perspective, from an ability to reduce stress and improve our health, we're more motivated to sit down once or twice a day and do something. Now the other thing, Holly, is if meditation just isn't what you go for, then let's look at one of the other two things, the journaling or flow. What I've found is there have been times in my life where meditation is fantastic, right? But I've found through this isolation, the journaling has probably been a little bit more powerful in helping me get back to the present. Now, this isn't mindfulness meditation in its purest form, but if you talk about getting back to attaining a state where you are mindful in the moment, I found journaling to be very powerful. And what I do is a few things. Like I've got, this is my current little journal at the moment, and I'll sit down at the end of each day for no more than 10 minutes. And what I normally do is I will meditate or sit down and journal on a quote from a Buddhist or Stoic, from the Stoic philosophy traditions. So I've got a book, this is my little book called The Obstacles Away. It's a book about a lot of the Stoic philosophy. And it's just full of quotes, right, that I can then use to actually think about in the moment. I'll read one to you. Like, this is one, it's a quote from Marcus Aurelius, and he just says, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been." Now, what I'll do is I'll write that down at the top of a page, and I'll just write maybe 5 or 6 lines about what that might mean to me in the moment. Now, what's actually going on for me from an emotional state is I start to get more centered, more mindful, more back to where I am, focusing on the wisdom and not really getting into this world of being caught up in the judgment of what's going on, right? Because Stoicism, like a lot of Buddhism, the similarity around understanding the power of perception or controlling the controllables and things like that. Sorry, focusing on the things you can control and not on the things that you can't control. But these are very similar sort of concepts, and both of them are driving this sense of being present in the moment, right? I know that in the Buddhist tradition, I've seen a number of people talk about that the most powerful form of journaling to create mindfulness is journaling on our mortality, right? And journaling on the temporary nature of life, to come back to the present and remember to focus on right now. You might also want to journal on things like gratitude or loving kindness or some things that are going on in your life, just to get the noise out, right? The other benefit of journaling, if you like, is when you start writing about yourself in the third person, like in the present moment. You know, what it means is I'm being more objective and less emotive about what's happening right now. So I write, Greg is currently feeling the following things. Greg is currently going about life in this manner. It's almost like you're writing, making some commentary about a video about yourself. These are powerful little techniques that make a big difference in creating a sense of mindfulness. The third practice here is this prioritizing, planning, and rehearsing the future. Now, in elite sport, like when we work with, let's just say, a rugby team or an AFL team or a netball team, what we want to do is create a sense of being in the present moment, like through flow, when they get on the field. That is absolutely critical. We want everyone knowing what everyone else is doing, being in the moment. It's the same with us in our lives, in our work, for executives in a boardroom. Those that know the game plan and have the skill and walk into a meeting room already knowing the outcome, what they're going to say, have rehearsed that in some way, they're the ones that are in flow. What we find is one of the killers of flow is not being prepared, right? That's a killer of mindfulness, because you walk in a room and you're mindful, but then all of a sudden you're not prepared, you don't know what's going on, and that starts to impact your emotional state. So the more we can, through journaling, just a little bit of a prep for a day, through some prioritization, planning and rehearsing, you will find that you'll automatically maintain a greater sense of mindfulness throughout the day. So that's the power of journaling. And you might find, as I've found at different times, that is more powerful than meditation. And other times I've found the other way around. I've found meditation to be better, which is the benefit of a utility belt, because it will give us those options under some stress.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some really good points there around, I guess, what to journal about. I bought a journal at the start of the first lockdown here in Melbourne, and so far it just has board game scores in it, and not a lot else, because I really needed some ideas about what to write.
Yeah, sure.
So that's really useful.
Yeah.
Although board game scores are important.
Yeah, well, look, and if you've never journaled before, I think that's really important, because you go, what the hell do I want to write about? You know?
Yeah.
I think a really powerful, like I've always loved going to quotes and different prose or poems and writing about those. I've found those because they just immediately get my brain going. Writing about what's going on in the day is also cool. But if you're talking about mindfulness, you need something that brings you back to the wisdom of the moment.
Definitely.
So let's go to the third method, if you like, and then we might start looking at some of the questions from the Facebook Live audience. Intense workouts. So this is about flow. Sorry, this is number one. So flow, a bit like mindfulness, is about being in the present moment, being aware and judging, being non-judgmental of what's going on. Flow is performing at your absolute best, right? So you're just instinctively responding, staying in the moment, and literally releasing a whole range of fantastic biochemicals into the body, which are positive for the body. So a few things here that are really important. The number one is that when you're doing things that are in flow, it requires total attention. You can't do that and something else, right? So intense workouts are like, as an example. So that might be anything from yoga to lifting weights to going for a run or a cycle. Obviously within our 5K radius at the moment, because that's our lockdown order. But doing that in that sense, right, is really powerful. So the intense workouts is one thing. Doing art, or those, I know you can download mindfulness coloring in at the moment. That's a bit of a craze. Certainly was about a year or two ago. The third is playing an instrument or dancing. These are fantastic ways of staying in the moment and in flow. And the fourth is we were given this the other day. Have you ever seen this little bop it? Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I've seen it.
A bit of a craze. Like when you do this, if you start going, you can't not be in flow. It requires all your attention because you just have to do it, right?
Yeah.
And my wife and I, we've only had this for about a week, but there's a little bit of competition so you can get the biggest score. I have to very unfortunately report that she's beating me for quite a way. But that's okay. We're in this little game of just trying to do that. And it's about flow. Now, the purists would say that flow is not necessarily mindfulness. Absolutely correct. I would not deny that. And neither is journaling. But the outcome is creating a greater sense of the muscle of being present in the moment. And if you're finding it really hard to do any meditation right now and you don't love journaling, then the next best thing to cultivate a sense of presence is flow. Because doing that activity means you have to be present. Okay, and I think that's the third thing that's really powerful. And overall, this is that mindfulness is presence. It's being in the now and responding to the world and what's in front of you without judgment, with instinct when you're in flow. And that's the benefit of that's what mindfulness is about, and the benefits are endless. So I might stop sharing the screen there. Oh, sorry, before we do, we should talk about what works for me and when is a good time. So the idea now is, you know what the three main methods are: meditation, journaling, and flow. There's a range of little sub-practices like breathing cadence, letting go, body scans, journaling, writing about yourself, planning, workouts, etc. In order to work out what's going to work for you and create your little Batman utility belt, write down the ones that might work for you. Then critically work out when would be a good time for you to do that. Now, that might be early in the morning, it might be lunchtime, it might be late at night after the kids have gone to bed, or when everything's calmed down. Work out a time that is right for you, when you're going to have the energy to do it and no distractions. So if you're a bit of a slow riser, don't put down meditation first thing in the morning. You'll just fall back asleep, right? don't put down an intense workout. You're not up for it. You're going to find it. You're going to spend way too much energy just getting to the start line. So follow your body's natural rhythms and you'll make a big difference. So I'll stop sharing my screen there, and maybe we can answer any more questions that you've got, Holly, or any that are coming from our listeners.
Yeah, I guess one of the ones that I have, being locked down has been pretty difficult. I tend to find that you have one of those days more than you would usually have just one of those days, where you just can't seem to get going.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I guess what's your number one recommendation for those days where it's just a struggle to get into flow and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of that whole thing. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I've had these days over the last, certainly since April, a lot more than normal, where you get up and you just don't have the energy to do anything. And I think it's that Kickstarter type thing that can be hard. And what we've really tried to do here is just get to the next step first, right? You don't have to go all the way to some amazing next level thing. Just say, right, let's just kick off, right? And just do one thing first. My wife and I will often start the day and say, right, what's a bit of a victory? What will victory look like for the end of today? Let's just get the first thing done. And once that momentum starts, then that's really good, right? What has worked really well for me is if in the moment I'm not moving. So this morning wasn't a great morning. I didn't start off. I had a few, bit of chaos around the house. And I sat down to work at 8 o'clock and I'm like, I'm not ready for this. Right. We've all been there. But I said, okay, back to my principles, go to what works here for me. And I just read a few quotes, read a little bit of this. And within about 15 minutes of just a bit of quiet reading, my brain shifted into gear and I was back in the game again. Because I think one of the real challenges right now is a shift between doing one thing like parenting or relationships, or then into work and then into workouts, all in the same little space. And you go from one to the other, and it's just hard to shift. So that's when I think just a little something that helps you shift your mindset can really help.
Awesome.
Lots of good questions on here,
already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Peter Kelly, he says, do you journal at the same time each day, like beginning or end? Peter, yeah, I do mostly end of the day, but I also do a little bit at the beginning. This depends how I feel. Like this morning, I did a bit to start the day, very short, only 5-10 minutes. Tips for practicing mindfulness in the workplace. Abby, I think the first two, which is around meditation, and particularly right now from working from home, the breathing practice is really powerful. And I also think your journaling is really powerful. So if you can combine some journaling with a bit of your own work planning, I think you'll find that starts to bring a real sense of mindfulness to the moment.
Do you find, Greg, with that, that setting aside time each day specific to mindfulness helps you? I know I've seen my husband does it. He sets a calendar reminder, and you see him at the same time every day go and sit on the couch and start meditating. Awesome. Do you think that helps you stay focused on that?
Yeah, my sense is that's really good for a certain percentage of the population. Some people are fantastic at that little discipline. And if you are, then make it a ritual. I know lots of people, that's how they start their day. I start my day with a planning session. And if that, which for what I'm going to focus on for the day, what are the top 3 priorities linked to our strategy, whatever we've got to do in the household, particularly right now. So I always start the day with something like that. It's sitting at my desk with a cup of coffee, and that's how I start. Gets me into the moment. And the better you are at that session, a lot of people don't really put much thought into the quality of that session, but the more you can put in some good practice into that session, the better it will become to kicking you into gear. It's almost like it automates the kickstart for the day. And I think that's really powerful.
Awesome. There's a question from Ashley.
Ashley, I'm trying to practice in recent months, and I've definitely seen the benefits. Found that I prefer to listen to guided meditation. Absolutely. Yeah. I think the guided meditations are fantastic. Actually, I don't have any recommendations because I haven't really done much of that. I used to have an app called something Buddha. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was Daily Buddha or something, and it had a few on it that you could listen to. It would track how much meditation you were doing. I think the guys from headspace.com, they have some good ones. I recommend go and check that out. They're really good. And wonderful to see you're getting some benefits. Actually, that is really good. Guided meditations are wonderful if you're starting out. Andrew Betty, thanks. No worries, mate. James Presky, I live in a small apartment space and I've really struggled with keeping fit without disrupting neighbours. Any intense workout ideas suited for small spaces? James, I have been using, if you haven't ever done Tabata workouts, these are wonderful ones. I do these quite a lot. Tabata workouts are normally 8 cycles of 30 seconds. And in that 30 seconds, you work out for 20 seconds and then have 10-second break. So we might have, you can do 4 cycles then in 16 minutes, or you can do 8 cycles in 32 minutes, which is what we generally do. And it might be, if you get some small weights or something, it might be some squats and then some shoulder press and then some arm curls and then some burpees, but always like looking to be pretty soft on the ground, right? As far as not stomping your feet or anything like that. That's really worked for me. So Tabata, they're high intensity interval training and really gets the heart rate going, mate. So if you want, I can put some links to that and I'll even share you a couple of our own ones that we've done here. So I think that's all the comments right now.
Do you think that you could do those workouts that you were talking about? Are most of those easy to do within an apartment within a small space? I know there are some of our clients particularly that live in small apartments in the CBD and that sort of thing.
Yep. So these workouts, we do them essentially in our lounge room.
Yep.
Awesome. So you don't need any space at all. Yeah. And they can be as hard as you want them to be. They can be super hard, right? Or they can be just whatever level of fitness you are.
Awesome.
So I'll put some links to that and a couple of ones that we use that are in particular use very, very small amount of space and we've only got, I think we've got 2 5-kilo dumbbells. So we don't have much weight at all.
Awesome.
Yeah. Excellent.
I guess, is there any other questions on there at the moment?
There's no other questions, and I think we've been going for quite a while. So what we should do is we should let people return to their day, and we will we'll keep monitoring the questions. If you've got any questions, keep posting them, and we'll get back to you. And next week, so team, next week we're going to look at rituals and routines and how to apply those in lockdown. We should definitely once again recognise the wonderful work SSKB is doing here and helping their customers, their clients in lockdown. Wonderful idea. We're here if you need us. Just drop a comment in the Facebook group or email one of us directly.
Awesome. Good session.
Thanks, Holly.
Really good. Awesome. All right. We'll see you next week. Hopefully by next week, I've got more than just my board game scores in my journal.
Yes. All right, Holly. Take care.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Greg.
Cheers. Bye.